Welcome to the Motherhood Alliance podcast, the podcast dedicated to empowering moms and families on their health and wellness journey. I'm Brittany Suttner.
And I'm Drea Brit. Together, we're here to explore holistic approaches that go beyond conventional medicine.
Each week, we dive into topics that matter most to you. Everything from nutrition and mental health to alternative therapies and natural living.
And whether you're a new mom navigating the early stages of parenthood or a seasoned pro looking for new ways to support your family's well-being, you're in the right place.
Even better, all of our guests are local small business owners who you can actually talk to and work with. You can learn more about today's guest and connect with hundreds of other health and wellness professionals through our informative and easy-to-use directory at motherhoodalliance.com.
Before we get started, keep in mind that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personal healthcare advice. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any changes based on the podcast content.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Are you ready to help your family thrive? Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. We are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome you to a 4-episode series with Abbey McLaughlin, who is a registered nurse and international board-certified lactation consultant. She also joined us with her sidekick, 5-week-old Henry, so if you're someone who melts at the periodic sounds of newborn grunts and squeaks, you're in for a treat. You may hear him in the background just a little bit, and he is so sweet. Abbey is the owner of Mal's Milky in Appleton, Wisconsin, and she aims to empower families by providing personalized lactation care and education, allowing them to achieve their feeding goals. Like many members of the Motherhood Alliance, Abbey discovered her calling and established her business after experiencing a challenge for herself, and in her case, it was a traumatic first breastfeeding experience with her first daughter, Mallory. Abbey is a wealth of knowledge regarding all topics related to feeding tiny humans, including breastfeeding, bottle refusal, premature and medically complicated infants, latching and positioning, prenatal education, and so much more. In this 4-part series, we take deep dives into multiple topics, including what does a lactation consultant do and not do in episode 1, liquid gold, the benefits and surprising additional uses of breast milk in episode 2, feeding newborns, what to expect and tips for success in episode 3, and finally, weaning from breast and bottle, when to wean and practical tips for success. Abbey offers multiple programs and packages, as well as a free prenatal consultation for anyone who wants to ask questions and connect with her before baby is born. But I do want to mention a special promo she is offering Motherhood Alliance listeners. You can get $50 off of her life cycle package, which, side note, I would have loved to have this when my kids were little, and I would highly recommend it. But you can get the $50 off her life cycle package by using the code MMW3, all capitals, for the MMW. So MMW3 to take advantage of that special offer. Let's dive into today's conversation with Abbey and baby Henry. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, Abbey.
Thank you for having me.
We are excited to talk about this topic, a little bit different and maybe something that people wouldn't necessarily think about calling a lactation consultant for. We're going to talk about weaning. So this will be a fun topic to talk through. We have a handful of questions that I think a lot of people actually do think in their minds, but maybe just don't know who to ask. But I think in today's society, it's really interesting because it's become more common for moms to breastfeed their children when they're 2 years old, 3 years old, maybe even 4 years old. It's become just a longer common practice, which is amazing. But that's not how it always was. Like I remember our grandma back in the day during her generation, breastfeeding was almost unnormalized, whatever that word is. And they would, a woman would have a baby and she would almost force herself to dry up and do formula instead.
Was that a big push from formula companies? Do you know the history about that at all?
I don't know a ton about that history, but like personal experience as well. Like my grandma per se was that as well. She formula fed all of her kids, but my grandma's sisters who are older than her all breastfed. So it was really funny listening and watching both of them or all 3 of them watching me breastfeed. Because my grandma was always like, is there a reason why you didn't get dressed today? And then her sisters would always be like, oh, I loved breastfeeding. It was my favorite thing in the world. But it's just really funny how like as a society, we have different pushes at the time. And so my grandma's push was formula. It was just becoming popular. And, I feel like probably easier at the time because that was also at the time when family units were starting to not be as close as they were. So I feel like that was a different time too. Because like you still think like parents who live with their parents still and you have grandparent support in the house and living with extended family, that was starting to not be as common. And so formula became more common. And
Well, you think too, a lot of women probably going back to work, like forever.
for sure.
Most women would stay home, right? And so obviously if you're home, it's a lot easier to breastfeed. And of course, when formula companies started their marketing and everything else, I'm sure that there was a lot of push for that. And
Marketed
this is
for
the
the
best.
working moms.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So, I mean, we should probably learn more about the history of that. That's just kind of all of our thoughts behind it. But it makes sense, you know? And now as things kind of change, like holistically, people are thinking more like that. They want to get back into the natural way of doing things. And so here we are seeing moms breastfeed 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, like you said, maybe even up to 4.
Yeah, where do you feel like society is nowadays? Like, what age is it kind of accepted through?
Honestly, I feel like even nowadays pushing 1, some people still give like looks
Oh,
like,
wow,
oh, you're
really?
still breastfeeding. Because some babies just look bigger. And I feel like the old recommendation was exclusive breastfeeding to 6 months. And so then after that, maybe people started using formula or just pumping and bottle feeding, and nursing at the breast wasn't as common. And now the current recommendation is to continue breastfeeding through years 2 and beyond, is the language. So while it may be normal to us moms, the rest of society doesn't always know that. So I feel like a lot of people still think nursing toddlers is like taboo. And even just like nursing in public, even I, as an IBCLC, like will get looks and stuff for feeding. And it's just like different. So I feel like it depends what setting you're in. But I feel like society's still pretty 50-50.
That's so interesting. And if you guys didn't listen to our episode about liquid gold and the benefits of breast milk, go back and listen to that episode, because there was so much amazing information in there that also is helping to support why we should be breastfeeding longer, right? So
Absolutely.
let's dive into weaning. Now, you said the actual recommendation for breastfeeding has gone up to 2 years.
Yeah. So, like UNICEF, World Health Organization, American Academy of Pediatrics all agree that you should exclusively breastfeed your infant to 6 months. So, that's no formula, water, herb supplement, anything else besides breast milk. Around that time, begin solids, and then continued breastfeeding or giving breast milk in addition to solids through years 2 and beyond.
Wow. I mean, I remember during my breastfeeding days, it was 1 year
Yeah,
was
it
kind
was
of like
1.
the goal, right? And if you made it to 1 year, it's like, let's have a celebration.
Huge
Yeah,
celebration.
and you should still. But when you say that, there's 2 pieces. There's one piece that goes through my head of like, yeah, I mean, I am totally on board with that because I know the benefits of breast milk for my kids. And in the grand scheme of things, 2 years of their life is so short. But it also makes me feel like I remember how hard it was, and that journey is so much longer then. So I can see that being a really challenging mental battle for women, especially once they hit that kind of traditional 1 year. How many women do continue? How do you encourage them mentally through this process?
And I think what I'm, at least me, currently seeing now is a lot of people, once they hit that 1 year, they're like, oh, I'm actually not ready to be done like I thought I was. Because I feel like when you're in the trenches in those first couple weeks, months, it is hard, even if it's like easy because nobody's getting sleep, and just newborns in general are hard. So I feel like a lot of moms are like, okay, well, now I don't have to pump at work anymore, but I'm still going to nurse at home. And I see continued nursing even when they're separated from their babies, which is possible, which is great because that's a huge barrier. Is people like, I don't want to pump for 2 years, which you don't always have to. So I think like once people realize like, oh, we can just nurse like a couple times a day on my toddler's timeline and I don't have to pump otherwise, oh, I guess we can do this a little longer.
Well, and also people, especially growing families, once your kiddo reaches 2, a lot of people are actually starting the next kiddo, like you don't wait necessarily 2 years to get pregnant again. Some people start earlier. So then you have that whole ordeal as well. And so it makes it a little easier when, I guess, some people are done. Like for me, when I was pregnant with my youngest and my oldest was 2, he actually weaned when he was about a little over 2, but I just remember my nipples hurt so bad when I was pregnant. And that's kind of just where I was. So I think a lot of people kind of get to that point too.
For sure. And I've experienced both actually. So with Mallory, when I got pregnant with Margaret, Mallory was about like 16, 18 months range. So she was a little bit older, and at that time only nursing like in the morning, nap time and bedtime kind of thing for really just comfort, right? And so when I got pregnant with Margaret, I sucked it up because I also had really sensitive nipples and it hurt so bad to breastfeed her. But I really wanted to give her those comfort things. But after like the first trimester, I self-weaned her because I was like, I need to be done for my own sanity because it just hurt so bad. And it was like becoming an aversion to nursing her because it hurt so bad. And then with Margaret, we got pregnant sooner and she was only a year when I got pregnant and she was nowhere near ready to be done nursing, still nursing like 6+ times a day. And I was like, okay, there's no end in sight for this. And I have been pretty vulnerable about it on my social media as well, about nursing through pregnancy, because it was really hard for me. And some people don't have that struggle, but I wanted to continue to give her what she needed. And to me, it was worth that to suck it up. And some people need their space and that mental health, because really for her, it wasn't a nutritional need anymore. She was having solids, getting other forms of liquids. So it wasn't necessary, but I wanted to do it for her and ended up still nursing her now. So, which is really was a lot to nurse her my whole pregnancy. And especially towards the end, because he was 2 weeks late. So already feeling very too pregnant to function. Right. And then having my toddler nursing on my don't look at me pregnant body.
Yeah.
Was a lot. And now managing tandem feeding has been a challenge as well.
Well, before we jump into weaning, do you have any additional tips for tandem feeding?
So tandem feeding is basically when you're nursing your older child and then your new baby. And honestly, the most challenging piece for me has been the mental aspect and that feeling touched out, because I literally have a baby plus some on my body all the time. So it's very overstimulating, and that's been the most challenging piece for me. But another piece that I didn't really anticipate, because I did not have my lactation training with Mallory, and I remember being engorged for weeks. So with Margaret, I'm like, okay, I have more training, I know what to do, and my engorgement went away within 24 hours, which was great. And then nursing both of them, I didn't really think about it, but I was engorged a lot longer because now I had my toddler and my baby nursing, and my body was like, what the heck is going on here? So that took a little bit of time to kind of like even itself out. But really what I've just had to do is like put boundaries around it for my toddler. And like, she gets very upset, sometimes screams, cries, hits, kicks, does all the things when I tell her no. But unfortunately, that's just what I've had to do for my own mental health, to be like, okay, I know Henry's nursing right now, but it's his turn and you can have milk later. And so I've just kind of like restricted her in that way, because of course, every time he eats, she wants to eat and I just can't do it.
Yeah, I applaud you. Can we all give a round of applause to all the tandem feeders out there, because that's incredible. I mean, but to think about, you're still gifting her this nourishment at this age too is just incredible. So getting back to weaning, what do you feel like are the most common reasons for weaning? Do you feel like typically the mom kind of reaches a milestone and is like, whew, I made it, I'm done? Is it typically the babies or toddlers that are deciding that they want to wean? What's most common?
I feel like it's most common for the moms to stop, because I think majority of babies, toddlers, kids would nurse until we made them stop. I've seen kids go to kindergarten still nursing before and after school. So, I mean, I think a lot of babies would do it forever if they could. So it's really a lot of times the moms. I think that 1 year milestone is a pretty big one. I always hear or have like a lot of my life cycle moms reach out and be like, okay, you know, if I'm getting close to a year, like around that 10, 11 month stage, like, hey, can we start chatting about weaning off pumping when I hit that year and what that looks like? But then I think a lot of people learn that they can wean off pumping at work and then continue nursing at home. And they're like, oh, well, then maybe this isn't as difficult as I thought. Because I personally don't love pumping either. And that was something that I had to do in order to continue nursing Mallory, was learn how to stop pumping at work and just nurse at home, which was a lifesaver for me. So
probably, and I would just, because this was true for me, so I'm going to assume in some ways it's true for a lot of people. When you are going through the weaning time frame, decreasing or eliminating the night feedings is the hardest piece. What's your recommendations on helping with that process?
Well, number one, every baby has different needs, right? And I've had like pediatricians and providers say like, oh, by this age, they shouldn't be feeding in the night anymore. But that's not always true. Sometimes babies like do need that. But the number one easiest way to stop night feedings is to feed more during the day, right? Because if babies are waking up in the middle of the night to actually eat, and moms that have older infants can tell the difference between comfort sucking and
Yeah,
sucking
there's
for
a
milk,
difference.
right?
Yeah.
So if you know that your baby's actually eating in the middle of the night, try increasing feedings during the day. And if that means you need to nurse more often or send more milk to daycare or whatever that looks like, then you do that. That's the first step. Otherwise, if you know that it's straight comfort, I would say start setting boundaries, which, like I said, I do with my toddler. And it's not always easy, but if that's what's going to help our mental health as well and help everybody get more sleep, and it's not always a quick fix, right? And sometimes people will self-wean their babies in like days, and sometimes it takes weeks. So I would suggest like, okay, what does your routine look like? Is your baby still nursing 3 times in the night? Why don't you focus on cutting one of those out first? And during that time, you can say, no milk right now, but mom's here to snuggle, and just like provide that comfort for your child without giving them the milk. Or is there another way that they can suck to soothe?
Maybe dad or your partner can go in there instead.
For sure.
Okay, so mom may be ready, but is there any situations that would actually like warrant a mom or to end her breastfeeding journey early? Like, maybe it's pain, nipple pain, maybe it's surgeries, maybe it's chemotherapy, those sorts of things.
Sure. I mean, there's definitely things out there as a general for like disease or illness. It's pretty rare to have something where you can't feed your baby. One thing that comes to mind, like tuberculosis, those are all things like where you would need to be separated from your infant. And if you're sick with one of those things, you're probably at the hospital and you probably are in quarantine. So you would probably know that you can't directly nurse your baby, but there are cases where like the medication you can't feed your baby for X amount of time on. So if people want to continue to breastfeed, you basically just pump and dump, or like we said before, save it for something else until you are able to nurse your baby again. So there's different things out there like that. But typically, if you have a disease where you can't, your doctor's like telling you way ahead of time and you'll be so sick that But really, it's pretty rare to be ill with something that we can't feed our baby on. And as a general, like any antibiotics and things, you can always ask your provider, like, hey, I'm breastfeeding. Can you help me find a breastfeeding friendly antibiotic or medication to help me with whatever condition? But for majority, breastfeeding is pretty good with most conditions. There are things out there that could make it more difficult to breastfeed, like hormonal things or thyroid things, which work hand in hand with a provider and a lactation consultant and try to overcome those things. Surgeries, things like that. It's really just dependent on the mom and what kind of surgery you're having. But same scenario, if you want to continue to breastfeed, then I would do your last pump right before you get anesthesia. But most anesthesia nowadays, once you wake up, it's safe to feed your breast milk to your baby. So just make sure that you tell your anesthesiologist that you're breastfeeding and they'll let you know. There are still some like pharmacists and doctors out there that will say that they're not safe to feed and like tell people they need to pump and dump for 24 hours or 48 hours. I would always check with another provider or with that lact med, look it up, because a lot of times things are actually safe and it's just old recommendations that people don't know about the current. So things like that. But depending on your surgery, if you are having a massive surgery and you know that you're not going to be able to care for your infant, and you don't want to pump and it's too much, great. Like, let's talk about weaning. How do we dry up? It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect transition into how do you actually dry up? And obviously in the unique circumstances, like you were just saying with the surgery or something, that might be the reason why. But sometimes babies do just self-wean early. So if they're young, like let's just say under that 1 year mark, I would assume you would recommend to continue pumping.
Sure, it's really up to the mom. So number one, it's extremely rare for a baby under 1 to self-wean. What typically I would think that is like a nursing strike. So is there a reason why they're not nursing anymore? And if it is like your goal to continue breastfeeding and you don't want to pump, I would work with a lactation consultant to be like, hey, can you help me figure out, like, let's put on our detective hats. Can we figure out why they're not nursing anymore? Sometimes it's like a crazy, scary noise they heard and now they're associating it with feeding or something like that. If you're pumping, bottle feeding, and nursing, my first go-to is like, hey, is daycare paced bottle feeding? Because a lot of times they'll get that free flow at the bottle and don't have to work very hard and then come back to the breast and they're like, well, this is too much work. So that's a lot of times like, okay, can we investigate what's the reason? So if mom's goal is to continue nursing, let's investigate. If it's not, then if they're under 1, the first best choice would be to pump and bottle feed. If that's not your next choice, then okay, let's talk about a formula that would be great for your family, in which I don't give formula recommendations because technically it's a prescription because there's so many different formulas and calorie things out there. So I always tell people to work with their provider, or there's like a website resource that off the top of my head, I don't remember the name, but have the link to send to people that goes over like, how can we choose a formula for my family? So that's a great resource, but they do still need either formula or breast milk up until that 1 year of age. So that would be the next best step. And to wean, it really just depends what it looks like. But again, slow and steady wins the race, is really especially to avoid things like mastitis when you're trying to wean. So it really just depends on how quickly you're trying to wean, on what kind of route that you would take.
What are the, like I said, I think of night feedings as a big challenge during the weaning timeframe. And I think you did a really good job of reminding us that a lot of times it's just comfort. But what are some other common challenges that you hear from moms when they are trying to wean?
A big thing is like strict pumping routines at work. Like a lot of times people have to sign up for a pumping room. And so like their wiggle room with their pumping schedule isn't always like adaptable. So that sometimes can be a barrier for people weaning. But what I say to that is we're just going to start decreasing the time that we're pumping for. So there's ways to like play around with that. But I think like having the freedom at work to kind of change your routine is a challenge, especially towards that 1 year mark.
What about weaning from bottles to cups? So let's just say that oftentimes, whether you breastfed or you bottle fed entirely, babies learn how to use bottles, right? And I know I breastfed my kids, but we also used bottles for when I wanted a night away. So many kids have to deal with getting off of a bottle. What are your tips for that? Because that's a whole different transition.
It sure is. And honestly, I tend to start families on open cups or straws probably well before a year. I think it's always easier to transition. And I start introducing personally with my own kids open cups when we start solid feeding, because I think it's just great practice. But I'm also the mom that doesn't care what kind of mess they make, right? So we just clean it up. But I think really just integrating different ways of feeding can make the weaning process a lot smoother. So even if you're still like offering breast milk in an open or a straw cup, and just like, again, create that positive experience. Because I think if you're trying to force things on your kids, that's when they're going to be like, nope, not doing it. So I think just like creating the positive, like, okay, if you don't want to drink out of the straw or you don't want to take the bottle and you want to nurse, like, can we find the happy medium where we're slowly going to integrate these things and start creating those boundaries around it, without saying you're going to have this or you're going to starve, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one more question that I have on this is that a lot of times, especially if it's your last baby, weaning can be really mentally hard. Emotionally hard. And it's just kind of the closing of a chapter, and it can be just be really difficult in a lot of ways. So maybe not quite something you learned through all your lactation consultant education, but you're experienced in this industry. And so what tips can you give families for when they're ending this journey?
My mom to mom advice is take more pictures. Have people take pictures of you nursing your baby.
Oh, that's such a good. I took like 2 ever, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Have your husband like take a picture of me right now.
Yeah. It wasn't until I started like my own private practice and I was like, oh, I need social media content. And Mallory was a year already. And that was like my first nice breastfeeding photos of her, besides the one that I take of myself from like up above, and it's not attractive to anybody. Right. So it's like, now having more children, that's one thing I'm like, I need all these pictures of me. And like even the tandem feeding, I'm like, I know I'm going to want to remember that and look back on that. And I think like even emotionally, like it's so nice for us as our kids grow to look back on baby photos and things like that. So why wouldn't we do that for our nursing experience too?
What great advice.
Yeah. And not only, I mean, probably because of your industry, but also you have professional photos of you breastfeeding. I love that.
Yeah. And honestly, we found like our family photographer just like takes them. The first time I didn't even request, it was just like me feeding my babies at our family photo shoots or newborn photo shoots, and they just captured them. And I was like, everybody needs those in their lives because they need those like glamorized photos, which on social media sometimes can be hard for other moms to see. And that doesn't mean that your whole journey needs to look that picture perfect, right? But it is nice to have those like beautified moments of all the hard work that we did and those beautiful bonding.
Yeah. And especially if you're not even like a open, maybe you're someone who's even a little bit uncomfortable just trying to breastfeed in public. But I love what you just said about having a photographer just capture those moments for your own private remembrance. That's
Absolutely.
just incredible. Awesome. Well, again, Abbey, how can people connect with you if they'd like to learn more about what you offer or just even have some questions for a lactation consultant?
So as always, expectant moms, if you are pregnant, please take advantage of that free one-on-one 30-minute chat. It's just like a meet and greet. Come learn about what services look like. And if you've already had your baby, I have done like quote unquote half life cycle packages. So if people just find out about me after they've had their baby, but they know they want unlimited support, another beauty of private practice is we can customize things. So reach out the second that you feel like things are off or difficult or just don't feel right. You can reach out to me personally, either through social media or text or a phone call, and I can help direct you on how to be seen.
One final question is, do you offer anything virtually? I know that would be tricky when you really need to kind of be one-on-one with somebody, but do you offer any virtual options?
Yeah, I do. Not all insurances will cover a telehealth visit. However, I have done multiple. So that's really nice for like a mom who is like out of my travel radius or doesn't want to like pay a travel fee, but wants to be seen or doesn't want to come into the office. So that's a really great way. And while it's not the ideal scenario, we can still make a lot of progress and still provide a lot of assistance, which is great.
Yeah. What you're doing is awesome. Thank you for serving all these moms during times when they are really confused. You are like a stake in the ground of confidence and
Definitely
knowing that they can lean on you.
You were around when we had our kids and all that. Yeah, you're a lifesaver.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.